There's definitely an art to expanding your impact without diluting your identity. People don't act because something makes sense. They act because something feels aligned. And whether that's energetically, emotionally, or neurologically, that's ultimately like the best persuasion skill that we could always have. Most people are speaking at the wrong frequency. They sound anxious or desperate or misaligned. And even if the content itself is really, really good, the message won't land. And that's because the nervous system just says, nope, doesn't feel right. I'm not digging it. I'm not buying into it. I don't want any part of it. This is why a beginner with the right frequency will outperform a seasoned pro with the wrong one. It's because that frequency will always outbeat any type of formula or framework or step-by-step script.
Hey, guys, it is Alison. I am the host of your show, Alison Answers Mission Awake. I cannot wait to sit down with you today and go over how we are going to crush the mediocrity in your life that has been plaguing our society since the beginning of time. I cannot wait to have a real deal conversation that includes intelligence, fun, excitement, and real actionable steps to make a real difference in the life that you're living now and making it into something you can be damn proud of and excited to live. Sit down, put on your damn seatbelt, and get ready for the ride of your life. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Alison from Alison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. I love the next guest. He is a personal friend and also a Narate brother. So we share that experience together, but he's also an absolute genius. And you will walk away from this podcast with a deeper understanding of how to overcome frightening things, how to understand the neuroscience of marketing and persuasion. This is not just for business owners. This is also for people who are just need to understand a really profound neuroscience principles of persuasion with integrity, might I add. And also what you're going to walk away with Alex Vonderhaar is the unbelievable genius that he brings, and he will explain to you the levels of consciousness. Hopefully he's going to do that. I'm going to try and ask my questions so I'm able to get the incredible wealth of knowledge that this man has across to you guys within the time that we have. So I may just interrupt him because I want to make sure that you guys grasp so many of the incredible concepts that he has, and he helps me so much. He's also an AI genius. So he brings things down into palpable bites so that we can understand large conceptual principles. So let me give you a little bit of a, bio on Alex. He has a reputation that where he helps business owners see what others miss. He is the kind of guy who definitely does that. He can see blind spots. The hidden psychology behind influence, persuasion, and growth. He's the founder and CEO of Hidden Falls Media, an agency that scales companies from 6 to 8 figures using neuromarketing strategies rooted in brain science. So he is a neuroscience genius. His clients don't just get more leads, they learn how to own attention in a world that's attention is everything. And everybody's scrambling and fighting for it. He's also a creator of the Neuro Insider, and this is a fast-growing publication and print series that has become a daily playbook for entrepreneurs and marketers. But I think anyone could learn so much from just reading this. Any entrepreneur and marketer that wants to understand the invisible levers that make people buy. When he's not leading his agency or writing for thousands of readers, he's busy reviving legacy e-commerce brands and teaching business owners how to win in an AI-driven marketplace. And just side note again, I am bringing him on as someone that I really admire and someone that has taught me a lot. And he's also an incredibly valuable, honest man of integrity. And this, when you hear words like persuasion, or you hear words like, the neuroscience of marketing, this is a man who does things with integrity. So he's not looking to manipulate people in order to make them buy. He's looking to understand people and understand the science behind people so that he can connect the right resources to the right people. So without any further ado, I am so excited to just be having this conversation with him. So here he is, Alex Vonderhaar, and I can never pronounce his name, so we'll see what happens with that. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Alison from Alison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. As I mentioned before, I have a gentleman on here. Oh my goodness, Alex Vonderhaar. Did I say it right?
You got it.
I was going to ask you off camera because I always butcher that last name. Anyhow, Alex, as I mentioned, I have Alex here as a dear friend to me, as an Arate brother, and as just a man that I think is going to add so much value today. And I'd like you to take notes to really listen up. And please like, subscribe, and follow Alex and follow me so I can bring you other amazing guests like him. So let's go. Alex, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you
for being here.
This is going to be fun. I'm so excited that we get to do this.
I know, and I get to hang out with you and learn from you, which is always good. What I'd love to start out with, I learned initially about Alex from a riveting story that he shared was regarding a backstory for him prior to becoming the successful man that he is and what he has built and learned a lot about himself from this experience. So Alex, would you share the story of that brush that you had with death and how that's influenced you from here on in?
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I know your audience is probably not used to hearing a neuromarketer or marketing expert come on and talk. So this is going to be really fun and interesting as we go through. But I didn't start out wanting to ever be a marketer. I didn't start out ever wanting to be a business owner, even though if you look back historically through my life, my grandfather would probably disagree with you because he said I can tell bullshit like every politician and I can communicate and have a lot of fun with a lot of different people. So he always believed I would end up in business, and I should have listened to him before going to college when he was like, you should take accounting classes, you should take business classes. I was like, no, I don't need any of that stuff. I'm not getting into it, so it doesn't matter. But out of high school, I wanted to be a graphic designer and work in the Hollywood industry. And now with AI, I'm kind of glad that I didn't because a lot of all that's going to be replaced very quickly. But I went to school to be a neurosurgeon. I found neuroscience super fascinating. The idea of like psychopharmacology, how different drugs affect the brain, very, very interesting to me. Even still to this day, like in my leisure time when I get to read, you'll often find me reading about pharmaceuticals and different psychoactive compounds. But yeah, at the age of 21, I had a heart attack that was caused by myocarditis. And this is way before the pandemic. This is almost 10 years ago now, a little over 10 years. And it completely changed the trajectory of my life because let's be honest, I mean, Alison, if you found out that your neurosurgeon had serious heart issues, would you want them cutting open into your brain?
I've never really thought about that, but probably not. But if they were you, yes, it's true.
So that's, after talking with advisors and talking with different people that were deep into the medical field, they were like, man, like it's just going to be a longer uphill battle than what you're probably going to want to deal with. Which was I was already staring down the barrel of another like 7 to 8 years of school, plus residency, plus fellowship, plus everything else that goes into that. And it got me thinking, like, is this actually what I want to do? Or is this other people's influence into my life around, hey, like you shouldn't do this, or you really need to look at other options. So after that, I'm still living at home with my mom in her basement. And I found a job working at a flotation therapy tank center. And I took every bit of interest in it because I was still trying to chase that near-death experience over and over again.
Can you tell us what that experience was? Because I remember you sharing it and how, I guess frightening it was.
Yeah, it was frightening, but it was also very psychedelic at the same time.
Jarrett?
Yeah, so I guess the best way to describe it is it was a series of entropied fractals. And when I started to dig into that more of like feeling the soul separate away from the body, it really kind of it really did a lot of damage, but it also allowed me now being able to look back. I was on Josh's podcast a few weeks ago when I was out there visiting him, and it's led me to what I wrapped up his podcast with, which is where he asked me like, what's something that the rest of the public isn't ready to know that you know? And I said, I really think that we are living in a deeply rooted large language model that's just reiterated over itself over and over again.
Mm.
Almost like how the Matrix, right? Where you can tap in and out of it. But depending on which scenario you're tapping into, it doesn't change that you are still you, that your consciousness is still you, but that you've bounced into a different reality of
Mm.
sorts.
Yes.
And now that I've kind of come through all this and have made these transitions, like the first year and a half out of that was pure hell. Like I was constantly worried about slipping back into it, or that I was going to realize that I wasn't really alive anymore, and that like there was a weird disassociation that was happening. And through flotation therapy tanks, I was able to kind of recenter, reground. I studied a whole bunch of the different world religions, how they all interacted, where the overlap was, what I agreed with, what I didn't agree with. And through this like year process, I really refound myself. But while I was working there, about 3 months, 4 months into working at the float tank center, the owner came to me and was like, hey man, like we've got a very short runway to figure this thing out, or I'm going to have to close the doors. And that's not really the thing that you want to hear after having the last quarter of your life be completely ripped out of your hands of like, oh yeah, you went to school to do this, that's gone. Oh, now you found a job. Oh, now that's about to be gone, right? Like it just felt like I was in a state of entropy where I couldn't spin out of it. So I took every dollar that I had, which was about 10 grand in savings, and I bought a online course from a guy who's now one of my mentors, Taylor Welch. And he taught how to build advertising and marketing funnels for small businesses that were service-based. So I figured out how to do all that. We bought ClickFunnels. We got into Google ads and Facebook ads. And within about a year, we turned them out from about 200,000 in debt to 2.2 million in reoccurring revenue. And at that time, I was managing 2 of the brick and mortar locations for them, which was all that they had. I was managing a team of about 11 girls, all under the age of 23. And I was 22, so like I really didn't know what I was doing as far as managing, besides, hey, are you able to come in today and work your actual shift, or am I going to have to come in? So I learned a lot during that, but the biggest thing that I learned was that how much psychology and neuroscience actually overlaps with marketing and business and persuasion. And that's what I found really interesting out of it. So I was consuming content like crazy. My background allowed me to read academic research papers that just kind of sit out there on PubMed or Elysium, and they just kind of sit there and nobody really ever touches them again. And I was a hound for information. Like I was printing off articles every single day, reading through 5 to 10 of them and just consuming as much as I could.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to go back to the moment, because you used language that is hard for most of us to understand. You said
Okay.
something that in the moment when you had your heart attack, that you described it as, like you said, fractal and something else. Could you explain what that meant? Because I think I think that what you're describing right now, I think I just have to say this. Because there's little things that you're saying that I didn't know about you. And I feel like you can just see your mission, I can see the visualization of it, just the path just being paved out in front of you. Like you can just see it. It's almost like something you'd see on like an inspiring show where you see this young man like reading and taking in all this information. I feel like you were meant for this.
Yeah.
Your brain is so fascinating to me. When you said that, you went into a dimension, I believe. I believe there's many of them, and right? So we can talk about that here. I always talk about it. So like what was your experience? And I think that it probably brought you into an existential crisis, I'm
Oh,
imagining.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was total loss of self and identity, but at the same time, like consciousness didn't fully disappear.
Yes.
So depending on which neuroscientist or doctor you ask, they'll say, some of them will say that you did start to separate from the body. Others will say, well, your brain was just hallucinating. I don't know. I wasn't the one that was able to do that. So, and through different psychedelics and float tanks and breathing exercises, I've tried to chase that dragon, and nothing's gotten me close to that, because there was
Tell me how come? What is it that you want to experience?
I guess out of that, I was chasing the peace and joy and serenity that happened of like feeling like 500 pounds of weight came off of the body, brain, and soul all at once.
Okay. So I know I'm trailing off, but that reminds me of experiences of like 4-hour meditations with
Mhm.
Dr. Joe Dispenza, like never wanting to come back
Yeah.
and just utter bliss, complete bliss.
Yeah. It's definitely a different vibrational frequency that I know we can tap into, but it's extremely either like you said, it's either very time consuming or takes decades of practice that I just don't have yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and at time, I definitely didn't have it. Float tanks help because there's no sensory input coming into the brain for it
Yes.
to get distracted with, right? I mean, we get close to 11 million bits of information a second, but our brain can really only process about 40 to 50 of them.
Yes.
So if we're looking at that dichotomy of like how much information we're actually pulling in subconsciously, it's amazing what can happen when you turn that off and focus on what you need to focus on, which during those exercises is just breath and coherence.
Yes. Yes. It's beautiful. Yeah. I love this conversation. This is right up my alley.
I
No
we
pun intended.
kidding we were gonna get weird. Let's get weird.
No, let's go. So now I kind of interrupted, not kind of, I did interrupt. So you can continue to share what you're sharing. But I feel like this segue into when you shared about when Alex and I spoke at an event together, Evolve, and you shared about levels of consciousness. Would you say that this would you like to share that with the listeners in a way that they can understand or a way
Sure,
they could utilize it?
sure. So let's before we get into that,
Yeah,
we kind of have to lay a little bit of ground rules.
do
The
it.
first one is that there's a difference between power and authority, right? So if you have power without authority, it's illegal, right? If I influence my power without the authority to do so,
Yeah,
the outcome is almost always something that breaks rules and laws that are either governed by society or by nature.
I got it. It's true. Mhm.
Yeah, and if
Yes.
if we flip it around, what's authority without power?
You're asking me?
Yeah,
I think authority without power is on some level, it's kind of like, I don't know, like abusive in a way. I mean,
mm,
if I'm extending my authority on you and I don't, well, oh, wait a second. I don't know, Alex, because I'm trying to think about authority without power. We would have to operationally define the word authority for me.
okay.
Because
What
like,
would
am I in charge? Am I the leader, but I have no power?
Sure, but how would you gain that authority?
Connection and, with whoever what like influence. How would I gain the influence would be through connection.
Sure. I think the only way to go through or and to obtain authority is to actually have suffered or gone through the shit.
Oh, so you're talking about like an authority of over like a subject or something like that. Like
Sure.
I'm an yeah. I now I understand because I feel like I have authority and power over addictions, eating disorders because I lived in that land. I
Mhm.
know how, like I can walk in that land with you. I put my stake in the ground and I can just sit with you there. I understand it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I got it.
So I've noticed a lot in my own life and when I'm interacting with others or I have to write, marketing copy or build campaigns, there's I started to put pieces together that we were essentially marketing to the inverse of their current emotional state. But it almost felt like that we had to bring people from one emotional state to another and almost like stair step their way forward.
Who are
And
the people that you're talking about?
who are they?
Yeah, are you talking about people who you are marketing for or
We're
to?
just trying to influence both. It
Got
really
it.
could be both, right? Because we're dealing with people. We're not marketing to a platform. We're not marketing to lines of code. Like we have to talk to people. And
Yeah.
therefore we have to understand their emotional resonance of where they're at in their life and where they want to go to. Because the idea of like marketing to pain and desires, I think is completely bullshit. We're not. We're marketing to what people's motives are. And that's how you can tell the difference between somebody that really understands what they're doing in this field versus people that are just like what we call button pushers. Like
Yeah.
they're really good at running an ad because they know how to push the right buttons, but they
Got
don't
it.
really know how to move people from one state to another. And they don't know how to transform their identity in the process. which is ultimately like what every great product or service is about, right? Like people don't buy a Louis Vuitton bag because it's the best leather bag out on the market. They're buying it because they want to signal to the rest of the world that they have status or that they're important or that they have financial freedom, right? There's more motivation behind that than just, oh, I have a fear of being, thought of as less, or I have the desire to have this one specific bag. It's just not
Mhm.
true.
Yeah.
So
Right.
what we started to look at was, okay, there's definitely an emotional chain that has to happen here. So what does that come back to? Well, there's this guy named Dr. Richard Dawson, and he was originally a psychiatrist before he went or I'm sorry, he was originally a medical doctor and then went into the field of psychiatry because he was noticing that people with specific vibrational frequencies, and it's hard to measure this, but so it's essentially like it's not really pseudoscience. It's a little bit further into the rigorous side because just there's so many anecdotal evidence points of this that it's no longer like BS.
Right.
But people that lived their life primarily in lower frequencies around shame, anger, guilt, they were developing cancer at really high rates and other metabolically poor diseases. And the further up the chain of transformation and of resting or like what Joe Dispenza would call coherence, the less likely for illness they were because the body could just fight it off before it even started.
Yes.
They also had different outlooks of life, how their God perception was. And there's full charts out there if you want to look up maps of consciousness, Richard Dawkins, about how all this plays together. But then we just started putting these pieces together around energetic flow and how do you market and advertise not just yourself, but to your audience? And how do you create that coherence within them? And you start to become an identity-based marketer more than you do a dopamine dealer.
I love that. Wait, an identity-based marketer rather than a dopamine dealer. I love
Yeah. And if you think about the brands that have lasted the test of time, you think about the ones that you admire now, whether that's Andy Frisella, Ed Milet, Joe Dispenza is another great one. Like he's not dealing you dope. None of them are dealing you quick dopamine hits. They're mirroring your identity back to you and what you already know to be true about yourself. Now they may be like if you do imagine that as two mirrors that are parallel and perpendicular, like right next to each other, they may shift their frame up a little bit in energy level because as humans, we're aspirational to grow. We don't ever want to be stuck at the same level we're at, even though people will say like, oh yeah, like I'm good with where I'm at in life. They're lying to you and to themselves. Like everybody, oh, it's a human need to want to grow.
Yes.
So you start to position your mirror a little bit further up towards them and just reflect back the identity that they know to be true about themselves and where they're looking to go. Your entire perspective of how you begin to market and advertise yourself completely changes.
Yes. I love that.
And it's how we get cults. It's how we get rebellion leaders, right? Because they're doing the same thing. It's the exact same tools, just used without the right power or without the right authority. Because if they don't have the authority to go through that and notice where they've been, how they're moving, and what their audience truly wants, they have power without the authority, which is therefore illegal in some realm, right? It may not be, based on US rules, but it may be illegal in the view of God and how they're influencing and moving people. It may be antithetical to the laws of nature and
Mm.
therefore it won't last.
Yes. Yes. I love this conversation. So, in regard to like the levels of consciousness, I have like a few questions about this because if you were to, how would people like practically apply that to their lives in order to raise their level of consciousness? I mean, I feel like I'm always looking to do that. I notice when my conscious, and I'm in a lower level, like
Mhm.
shame, like that part of you that comes up, shame or guilt or whatever. I know what I do is I try to like reparent that part or but I'm just wondering what you do and what you would tell people to do. Would you also just list them out quick? Like the
Sure.
yeah. Mhm.
So, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Beautifully.
Yeah. So, we all know, or at least have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Uh,
And that safety and survival is down at the bottom. And if we don't feel safe and secure, no matter where we are in our lives, whether that's emotionally or geographically or based on our environment, we will automatically fall back down to regain that safety.
Mhm.
And all the way from shame to pride is really considered to be living inside of what we call a survival based paradigm. And this is where I was saying, like, I don't believe in marketing to people's fears and desires,
Yeah.
right? Because what is that? That's all survival paradigm,
Yes.
right? Which means that we're never going to be able to mirror that we've actually outgrown, whether we have or not. Ideally, you have. But if you're stuck in a state of fear and desire, you're naturally going to be at a lower level, which means that you're going to attract people that are at lower levels.
Yes.
So let's say we're living in a state of shame all the time, right? Our predominant emotional state is constantly feeling humiliated. Our view of life is really miserable. It feels like that there's no way we can get out of this. We view God that he despises us. And our process is that we should just eliminate everything that's around us, right? We've all met people like this. We all know them. But this is such a low energy state that if I come at you and I'm just like, hey, peace and joy, man, and I try to shift peace and joy into you, you're not going to resonate with that at all. It's actually better for you to feel anger or to feel guilty about your shame than it is for me to try to push peace, love, and joy at you.
Yes.
Because you won't even be able to comprehend it that this is coming.
Yeah.
And most likely, you won't even recognize that these people exist, that people that are filled with peace, love, and joy exist in life, because your RAS is only tuned to what it feels like is important, novel, and relevant to you. So
Tell them what an RAS is.
yeah, it's your reticular activating system. So it's the part of your brain that filters out that 11 million bits of information a second down to that 40 or 50 that we were talking about. So if you really start to kind of zone in and say, if all I'm focused on because of my RAS is shame, guilt, grief, apathy, fear, you're not going to see the higher levels. And what's kind of ironic is that the people that operate on those higher levels won't notice you either.
Yep.
Because their RAS is completely tuned to something different. So this is how you can bring somebody up, is that you have to realize that you may have to dip down. Or let's say if somebody's living in a state of fear, right? I'm not going to be able to shame them or guilt them out of their fear. I'm going to have to really kind of double up and say, okay, what's something around 200? I could probably give them a great boost of courage if they're fearful. Or if they're in a state of desire, I could give them, hey, what if you lived your life and it was just filled with trust and said, trust that everything's going to work the way it says it's going to, and that God's going to give you everything you want because he enables those that want to do good, right? And when we start thinking about these mirrors and how we're reflecting things back to people, it ultimately changes ourselves, but more importantly, it leaves a positive influence on them.
Yes. It's beautiful. I love this. Hey, guys, how are you? Isn't that amazing? This story that we're hearing on this show is great. I want to just give a shameless plug of my book. I would really want people to have a good look at my book and to understand what it really is. I used to be ashamed to plug my book. And then I realized, how is that right? To keep the information, the 30 years of experience that I have, the 8 years of education, the trauma that I grew out of and learned how to manage and how to manage emotion, all the training I've had in neuroscience and quantum physics. How can I keep that from the public? So it's not, I used to think it was like something I should, be humble about. But being humble is silly when you're keeping things away from people that they need. So what I want to tell you about my book, and I hope that you do get it, because I think it will really help you. I've gotten a lot of tremendous feedback about my book, and that it's really, really of great value to a lot of people. And what it is, it's an interactive read, and there's inside of it, there's journal entries. So as I'm teaching and going through the book and teaching you how to create the life you want by understanding how you're wired, how your thoughts, feelings, how your words, how thoughts are things, and the neuroscience behind it, and how we are programmed from the time we're 0 to 7 years old to live a life of mediocrity or a life of poor design because of meaning that we attached to events when we were children that just became our programming. What I want to tell you is that there is a way out, and it's a simple way. It's very simple. I believe in the simplicity and the grace in healing, and that it doesn't have to be a big work. So I would love it if you'd get my book. It's a best-selling book on Amazon, and it's my first, and I encourage you to get it. It's called The Wake Up Call, an interactive read for building the life you want. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thanks so much for being on the show, and let's get back to it. What do you do yourself, Alex, to maintain, the highest level of consciousness?
I really float around neutrality. Just being honest, like sitting around 250, do I dip down into anger and fear and desire and shame? I'm human. I mean, it happens, right? We all have things in our lives that we're ashamed of, but ultimately, like being able to let go of that and saying, I have the authority to let go of that because I've already lived it. And I'm gonna let God handle that for the rest of me. I don't need to handle that anymore myself.
When you say handle that, do you mean the anger or any of those
All
other?
of it. All of
Yeah.
it. I pass it off to the higher power and say, look, I've already carried this load. It's time for you to carry it.
Awesome.
And guess
And that
what?
would be your.
It's every time.
It does. I know that. That is, and you know what? It is like tried and true. But people see that as a weakness, and I see it as a mighty strength. So people
Yeah.
will fight me on surrender. I'm like, yes.
Mhm.
Like, so when you don't know what to do, give it away, give it to God, let it
Yeah.
go. It's incredible. And we're both very responsible people. So it's not like we're not handling our shit. It's
Right.
just, so could you describe, so would you say that that level of neutrality, when you call it, that is the state of surrender and giving it over to God?
Yeah, I would say it is like release, like you are releasing it and just saying, This is no longer my cross to bear or my cross to carry." It's once you feel like you've learned that lesson, we have this horrible habit of wanting to hold on to it. And
Hold on to which?
any of them, any emotional state, right? Or
Oh,
any action or any consequence that we
100%.
feel like is,
Mhm.
on a lower level, we have this natural desire to wanna hang on to things that just don't serve us anymore.
Yes, it's true.
And it's
I
because we're just looping. We're looping these internal thoughts and patterns, and we don't realize that we've created this loop, which will eventually the worst type of looping you can ever do is create that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes. Yes. I'm gonna do a little segue into something that I think is just very, very important, and I think you will be of incredible help for this one little area.
What you got?
I did a post, a reel, and it just, there's like 400,000 views or whatever, but the whole entire stream of people on that reel, the comments and everything, is primarily people who want to die by suicide, have
Mhm.
lost complete hope. Their answer is no one loves me, and they're in this state of that very low vibration. And it was the intent of the reel, it was just a very small micro of a podcast that I was doing, but I was speaking to people who had lost people who died by suicide, right? So what I had said in there was that people who die by suicide they're not cowards, and they're not selfish. And what I was trying to I was speaking to people who were suffering with that anger of that
Mhm.
kind of, and just saying that, hey, you know, it's an eclipse of their mind, basically. And but it was such a small clip, and it's just never ending. So one of
Yeah.
the things I've been doing when I get on a podcast, or I ask anybody who's on the podcast, I say, what would you say to someone who's on that thread? Because I'm going to put it on there. What would you say to them directly if someone's saying, well, I've attempted 5 times. I have people on there say, I've attempted 12, maybe next time it'll work. No one loves me anyhow. Just I'm just curious, and I'm not trying to put the burden on you, but you have so much wisdom. Just if you were just sitting across from someone, what would you say to someone who was in that state?
First off, I'm not a mental health counselor, nor am I licensed or certified to
Yes,
deal with these individuals.
yes. Sorry,
Uh,
Alex. Yes. No pressure. No, I'm
yeah,
just
I
like
mean, when
in
I
regard to this, like
yeah.
how would you look at that?
I mean, I've definitely been in that state. Honestly, the thing that got me out was physical exercise was the number one thing that helped me get out of that state.
Yes.
Even if it's just walking outside and getting sunshine for 30 to 45 minutes, even if I went up and down the street twice in that 30 to 45 minutes,
Yes.
it at least pulled me out of my current environment to where I think that's the option,
Hmm.
right? And then the next one that I would look at is micro gratitudes. And, if you are just walking up and down the street, like, isn't it amazing that grass can grow without us? I'm super grateful that grass and trees grow without us needing to tend to them because they provide us oxygen, right? And when you start getting down that, there's a whole just field of positive psychology and gratitude
Yes.
which I'm not super well versed in, but I know enough to be dangerous. And it's incredible what just a little bit of gratitude can do for your emotional and physiological state.
Yes. So true. You know, the thing is, I feel like as you were describing, you were in the levels of consciousness, you were describing that state of shame that is just you cannot see the beauty.
Yeah.
You can't like, whatever you look for, you find. And if whatever like these things that we believe just become the reality, right?
Yeah.
We're creating this dark reality.
So if we're living in shame, the next level up would be guilt. So what do you feel guilty for? And is that guilt actually yours to carry?
Interesting. Yes. Yes.
It's
Yes.
a dark place.
It is. Yes. I spent so much time as a child always feeling guilty for no reason. Just always felt guilty, and it is a very dark. You always feel like you have to apologize and make, find a way to be approving, people approving of you, it's really rough to be
Yeah.
there. Yes. So, and I find here, and I'm sure you do, you see it all the time, is that so many people are living with this very core ball of shame, like as their center, and they don't realize that so much of their actions, behaviors, thoughts, beliefs are just all coming from that,
Right.
right? I guess seeing it and saying it,
Yeah.
right? I didn't mean to put pressure on you to, save people's lives and everything, but wherever we can, right? We want to just add our value, right?
And
Yeah.
I really would evaluate why you feel that shame is yours to carry. And maybe it was a previous action that was yours and that you do have to own. But
Mhm.
ultimately, like, you're not gonna win an award for carrying the most amount of shame.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna come and pat you on the back for saying, "Good job, you carried this burden way longer than what you ever had to."
Right.
And the
Right.
people that end up, quote unquote, "winning at life," they're no different. They just figured out how to get rid of that stuff faster and turn that energy into something else that's productive. And
Yes.
even if it is changing shame into guilt and guilt into apathy and then apathy into grief and grief into fear, right? Like, it wasn't done overnight. It was day
Yes.
after day them working at releasing all these things that no longer serve them. And I
Yes.
know that sounds like super woo woo and like clickbaity almost for social content, but it's not. Like, it's how we move through life. We're all going to ebb and flow, but it's all about where you rebound to naturally. And if you're rebounding and living in a constant state of these lower energies, it's not going to serve you or anybody else around you.
Yes. So true. And you see people who have just been through so much trauma, they don't they cannot see,
Yeah.
the
Well, it's because the body really does keep track of that. The somatic
Yes.
sense of self keeps so much of that that you don't even realize is there.
Yes. Yes. It's
It's
so
easier for the brain to push that aside and for us to focus on what's in front of us and what's
Mhm.
focal,
Yes.
specifically in front of us more.
As opposed to you mean memory in the body and in the body. Yes. Yes. I completely agree. So let me bring us to a lighter side, a lighter side of podcasting. Let's roll. Okay. So Alex, I have questions. How
Yeah.
can entrepreneurs and leaders recognize when they're operating from a lower level? It's kind of the same thing I'm asking, a lower level of consciousness, and what like steps help them move up? Because it may not be because I think all of this influences our road on managing a business or running a business. It influences everything.
Right. And as we start, really kind of moving up for business owners, there's different motivations behind why people would want to do that, right?
Yeah.
Some people are after the attention, others are after revenue. Some people just want to build belief at scale without having to sell their soul. Which direction do you want me to kind of go with
But
that?
can you just tell me what you mean by build their belief without selling their soul? What does that mean?
Yeah, I would say that this is like there's definitely an art to expanding your impact without diluting your identity.
Yeah, cool.
And I think most entrepreneurs think that I have to kill off the parts of me that aren't ROI generating in order to expand my impact. And that's just not true. They think that scale requires compromise and that the bigger you reach, the blurrier your message has to become. And that if you want to grow, you're going to have to water down the parts of you that don't fit into what your perceived alignment really is. And what actually happens is that it's the total opposite because when most people go after scale, and I hate that word because it's so so fuzzy and convoluted, and it doesn't give what people are really after, right? When people are like, "Oh, I want to scale my business." Well, great. Does that mean that you want to scale team? Does that mean you want to scale products sold? Like, does it mean you want to scale ROI? Like, what are we really after here? Because we don't have to grow the whole thing all at once. We can focus on independent areas and not be so generic with it. But ultimately, like, belief transfers at scale anyway, as long as your message has integrity and that you have emotional containment, meaning like, can your system hold people emotionally, not just logically? And are you building those containers for safety, resonance, and reinforcement? Or are you trying to build belief and scale that through like your identity and how clear you can be as that signal reaches further and further out? Like Patagonia's done this really well. Nike's done this really well. First Form's done this really well. There's a ton of companies that have done this, which means that there's a roadmap to success for these entrepreneurs, and it's not just locked in, magic or luck.
Can I just ask you, because I feel like this is beyond my understanding. So maybe it's just, I just want to grasp it a little more. So what is it? So you're describing this path to growth or marketing, right? But when you describe Patagonia, like how would you say they did it? I don't mean like the exact details, but could you just explain it a little further so I get it more?
Yeah. So Patagonia didn't scale by like chasing every buyer that could potentially be their audience, right? They scaled by doubling down on the ones who believed in them. They sued political leaders. They ran anti Black Friday campaigns. They told people not to buy their product, which is insane. And what happened? Their brand at the end of that became a moral signal into the marketplace. And that's the highest form of belief at scale, which is that if you wear this, it says something about what you stand for as an individual.
Love it.
Remember, it's all about mirroring back to them what it is that they're really after. It's not about trying to redefine the mirror for every single person.
So if I'm Logger Counseling Services and I want to transform the way that people perceive how to be emotionally and mentally well, and that not there people aren't living by labels and just stopping symptoms, but creating the life they want. Like, is that, would you say that that is I mean, I'm saying it in a more very broad way, but would you say that's a moral type of scaling? Like, what
Yeah.
are people?
I mean, so what you're trying to do is to scale frequency, right? Which is why we started off with levels of consciousness, is that we want to scale frequency that wins. And I know you've seen it happen. Your audience has definitely seen it happen, which is like you present the perfect offer, right? It's got flawless logic, there's obvious value, and maybe there's like even limited time bonuses in there, right? And when you launch it, there's still no sale. And it's not because that the information itself was wrong, but the frequency was off. And this is like one of the most misunderstood truths and influences that people don't act because something makes sense. They act because something feels aligned. And whether that's energetically, emotionally, or neurologically, that's ultimately like the best persuasion skill that we could always have.
Yeah.
So we're taught to believe that like the power of a good argument is what's going to be like clear reasoning would win the day. But as humans, we're not rational creatures who occasionally feel things. We're emotional creatures who occasionally justify things. And when logic and emotion kind of go to war with each other, emotion's always going to win every single time. And the problem isn't that it's logic itself, it's when you use it, because logic works after belief has already taken root, not before. So if we're trying to use logic to build belief or to build businesses and to resonate with audiences, you're already dead in the water against people like me and my clients that use this stuff every day to
Mm.
push this out because our nervous system doesn't speak English.
No.
Brain de- the brain decodes a word,
That's
but the body decodes the vibe that's going through that, the pacing, the tone, the syntax, the emotional charge that's coming at this. And this hits faster than language.
Yes.
And then our brain and our body are now determining how that language is received. So if you think of your message like a radio signal, if the frequency is off, the words are going to be distorted,
Yes.
right? But when the tuning is precise, the message becomes really clean. We can hear it, we can resonate with it. But most people are speaking at the wrong frequency. They sound anxious or desperate or misaligned. And even if the content itself is really, really good, right, the message won't land. And that's because the nervous system just says, nope, doesn't feel right. I'm not digging it. I'm not buying into it. I don't want any part of it. And this is why a beginner with the right frequency will outperform a seasoned pro with the wrong one. And we see this a lot, right? Like, how did somebody just pop onto the scene, right? It's that random tweet that didn't like take any thought whatsoever that goes viral, but the ones that you pour a ton of energy into just seem to go nowhere.
Yes.
It's because that frequency will always outbeat any type of formula or framework or step-by-step script.
Yes.
Right? We're always asking, do I trust this? Do I feel safe? And do I believe that this person actually believes themselves?
Yes.
Right? And if the answer to that is no on any part of that, your logic won't matter because the gate's never open for you to be allowed to push that message through and to actually resonate with your audience.
I'll tell you, I've seen this like myself. So, I mean, obviously, I'm sure we all have, but just even in the description of that one reel I described, you can pray and ask for things to go viral. But before that reel, started just getting all this traction or whatever, if you call 400,000 viral, I don't know, but it seems viral to me a bit. But what I did right before that, which is fascinating to me, is I said, God, I am not going to ask you for anything of mine to go viral. I only ask that everything that I do gets into the hands of the person that it will actually help, and that and it actually helps them, then they will send it to the person who it will also actually help.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of viral I would ask you for, that the way that I help expands. I am not kidding. Like, it was days before, then all of a sudden this thing, and it was just when I was just kind of like just sharing like a very vulnerable moment. I just wasn't even doing it for any reason. It was just weird. And it opened up this door for me that all those people on there, like I can actually see, like I love them. And I just pray over the whole thread of comments. I can't answer everyone. I try to, because I feel like it's just, I want to. And the love, so it almost like, I feel like it's like that one reel is like alive in this like different kind of way, which I would not want it to be. I don't want to see all of that. I mean, I'm a mental health professional. I know it's there, but to really just see it concentrated is just shocking.
Yeah. You earned
Yeah.
their permission through energy and then you reinforced it through logic,
Wow.
which
Could
is
you
how that
explain that? Could you explain that more?
Yeah. So you put out through energetic frequency, emotional resonance, and then cognitive permission. Those are the three layers of how you get to that, right? Your energetic frequency is your state of being, your tone beneath the words. Are you calm, certain? Are you congruent with who you think you are and what you say?
Right.
Your emotional resonance, which is their state, which is, are you speaking to what they're actually feeling, not what you think they're feeling? And then you have the last layer, which is cognitive permission, which is the logic layer. And you can only get to cognitive permission once energetic frequency and emotional resonance are actually aligned. And that's when you're able to seal the deal. But what most people do when they create content is that they try to start at the cognitive permission level. They stack proof, testimonials, bullet points, and then they wonder why nobody watches their stuff or why they don't get any leads or why everything seems to fall flat. Because you have to earn the permission through energy,
Yeah.
and then we'll reinforce it with our brain through logic.
So that last phase, when you're saying that people try to do that, is that when they're saying like, "Hey, I'm a mental health professional, 32 years," like all of that? No,
Yeah.
I'm selling myself
Right.
instead of just being myself.
Yeah, you have at that point, you have the script flipped, which is
Yeah.
you're trying to go from cognitive permission to emotional resonance, and then maybe you're thinking about what type of energy are you giving off instead of having it flipped the other way around.
So
Because
how?
people aren't gonna remember you unless you install a feeling anyway.
Yeah.
So what's the feeling?
Right.
Right, but you can't express what you're not already experiencing yourself, so you have to be in alignment too. So for, like, talking about, okay, well, then how do we tune this to what we want? Like, you need to ask, like, are you actually regulated right now, or are you being reactive to everything? Are you talking on video from a place of truth or from like, hey, I just got off a really tense call, or I just had to let somebody go, or I looked at our financial statements and that makes me really tense and scared,
Yeah.
right? Like, you have to ask where you're starting from before you actually produce this? And then the last one I always ask people is, does this message actually feel like a performance or a pattern interrupt that's rooted in clarity? Because if it feels like it's a performance, you've already lost. When you're pattern interrupting and you're rooted in clarity, that's completely different because you're speaking from a spot where your body, your brain, and your mind are totally in regulation, which means that you're in resonance. And you don't need to scream at that point. You need to tune. Because remember, people don't remember what you said, but they will always remember how your signal made them feel.
Yes. So when you say pattern disrupt, I mean, I think I know what you mean, but could you just explain that?
Yeah, pattern interrupt can be a million different things. It could
Yeah.
be a really creative, like 2-second intro, which is what most of the internet focuses on. It
Mm.
could be if all of your content was here inside of your office, but then you started one outside on a walk.
Oh, I see.
Right? You're interrupting yourself, which will also interrupt them because this is what I was getting back to when I was talking about my near-death experience. Like,
Yes.
I feel like it kind of tapped into a different fractal resonance around what I'm living in,
Wow. Yes.
right? So if you can give that resonance at those different levels, you just kind of tap into things a little bit differently.
Do you feel like that was a dividing line of your life? Well, I mean, I think it
Yeah.
was from what you say, but do you see that you went to a different dimension, frequency, or something like that?
Yeah, I'm definitely in an alternate timeline.
Yeah.
It's almost like Doctor. So you were at a
Yes.
when my superhero nickname was given to me of Doctor Strange, and people that watch the Marvel movies know that Doctor Strange he meditated or projected through all the various different outcomes of how all of this stuff could end, right? And he ended up coming back to this current reality, saying that this is our best opportunity to win.
I love that. I have noticed, like, and I know you're going to know what I'm talking about. Other people might. It doesn't matter if people think I'm crazy. I know it's true. I have noticed just like a sudden shift. I know I'm in another dimension.
Yeah.
And there's no way to actually operationally define it or really explain it. It's just I know. And everything may look kind of the same, but it's just not. I'm in a new place. It could be, and then you can see like little teeny physical evidence, like little small things
Mhm.
that are like, oh, like I'm not even going to say what they are. It used to be like a little subtle thing that's just a little different, and I almost feel like it's a little touch point from
Yeah.
God that just says, "Oh yeah, you're not the same,
Yeah.
right?
Just
You're
wait
the
till those whispers become screams. Then it's very trippy and psychedelic.
tell." Could you just tell us what you mean? Like when?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So usually, because I've been exactly with where you're talking about, right? Like where you feel like that you're breaking through, but that there's still resistance, but you're seeing glimmers and kind of like shimmers in reality around like,
Yes.
hey, this is the next spot where you're going. The more that you put yourself into coherence with your brain, body, and soul into that,
Mhm.
it won't be glimmers, like it'll be screaming at you. And then you look back, I do a lot of writing. When I look back in my writing, like the universe was literally screaming at me to go to go into a different direction. Like looking back from when I was going through medical school all the way through today, if you look back at my writing and journals from them, like it was screaming at me with the amount of resistance that was coming at me that wasn't mine to deal with.
Yes. So when you just describe that when that scream happens, like do you notice how do you go from glimmers to, allowing? Because I feel like the opposite resistance is allowing, right?
Mhm.
A surrendered state. So how do you do that? Just become aware?
Yeah, and like I said, I write like crazy. I probably write for 2 or 3 hours a day total.
And what do you write?
Anything and everything.
Like your thoughts, just exploring,
Mhm.
widening the way you think, that kind of thing?
Yeah, what I'm studying, what caught my attention, how my day's going, what my
Mhm.
emotional state is. We're really good at forgetting things. And it's a good
Yes.
thing, right? Like it serves an evolutionary purpose for us to forget, but it also means that we miss a lot of the signal that's actually mixed in with the noise. Like you should be paying like what I mean by that is like there's signs that you should be paying attention to, but I can't tell you what they are just like you can't tell somebody else what they are. But
Yes.
what's funny is that the people closest to us often notice those signals before we do,
Yes.
but it's up to us to listen and tune into them on how we should actually be perceiving this. It's why like when we go to I don't want to call them like self-help events, but like when we go to Arete summits, right? We're surrounded by people that have net worths that are huge multiples of ours. And they could say the same thing one year, say the exact same thing the next one. And you take a total 180 around that information and say, oh my gosh, how could I have been so blind not to see that the first time?
Yes.
Because now you're in more of an emotionally and psychologically resonant state to receive that information.
Yes. I have two questions. One is about the writing, and like that as you're I feel like it's almost like you're putting out this like when you're writing, I see it as like this field, and like you're everything that's on there. And do you then see the illuminated parts that are the messages? Is that how you're describing it?
Yeah, let me show this to you. This is how I take notes.
Oh,
So
yes.
there's an app that I use called Reflect, and all these different data points are surrounding all my core concepts, right? And how they all tie together. And then I've got it literally takes notes like it's a brain. So everything is association based. So there's association threads that, will pull off from the center of what I'm focused on into tangents. And then there's stuff that I have in the ecosphere, outer rim of the universe, so to speak, like that I haven't figured out what they connect to yet. So if I wanted to write something or dig into something, like I could double click into any of these and start to see like, what does that look like for me? What was my brain thinking at that time? And then as I like this bright blue one, there's my daily journal. So like you can see how it's connecting out to all these different nodes throughout time and space, trying to figure out how do I connect that to psychology? What does it look like if I connect this into somatic anchoring? Right. And all of that over time starts to give me more of a battlefield to play in for me to be able just to come more into alignment with what I want.
Can I ask you, so when we look at that, that's beautiful. I'm like, how do I dive in there? So when I'm picturing when you're writing that you're writing by hand. And I'm assuming now I can see you probably aren't. You're probably writing
Both.
to you do. So how does that actually take the data that you're putting in there? How does it then create that?
Yeah, you have to put in what are called backlinks into that app. So it's essentially like using the @ symbol instead of like adding a person. I'm adding like a tag or a category. Like as I'm writing, if I'm talking about, I don't know, like video games, right? Like if I wanted to connect video games with Roman culture, right? Like those would be two things where like there's no way you could connect them. Well, I can see how they might through that visualization map, and then through that I can get into more of my backlinking.
Yeah, but how would I make that map?
It's just
Bottom
over time. Yeah, it's just
No, but
over,
I mean,
right?
like,
So
yeah,
so if you
I'm
just
writing.
started
Where does it
daily,
go?
yeah, just put it into Reflect and just start using your notes for there.
So you put your notes in there,
Mhm.
right? So it's not, can you write them out and then like, can you put them in like as a picture, your
Yeah.
notes? Oh yeah, like AI.
Yeah,
It's the same.
and then it even has like voice record if you do voice memos to
Oh,
yourself.
there you go.
Yeah,
I'm doing
and
it.
it'll auto transcribe it, and you can say, "Hey, I want you to create a backlink for Apple computers to mental health,"
I
right?
feel like I have to pay you for this podcast. This is crazy. I'm so glad we're friends because this is so cool. So now let me ask you this. This is my second question in relation to what we're talking about. We're discussing it in relationship to like business and marketing and all of that, right? And this, how you have to be aligned
Mhm.
with your audience or whoever you want to influence or persuade. One of the biggest things I'm seeing everywhere, and as I'm also single, so, as a widow, so I'm like, I want to understand, and I just see so many people describing this whole like single world and dating thing that it's becoming that people are moving away from like joining together and just this kind of, it's just being labeled as a crisis,
Mm,
right? And like dating and all that. And I see how this applies clearly.
yeah,
Like you're going to draw the people that you're at the same frequency with. And if you're in a state of lack, then you're not going to draw the right thing in.
correct.
Right. How would you apply that to, just with people or dating or any of it?
Yeah, it's all about it. It all comes back to that mirror. So I'll give an example that's not necessarily about dating, but about
Mhm.
conflict resolution.
Okay, cool.
Is
Mhm.
that fair?
Yeah, it's so fair.
So recently I was not in a pleasant situation to be in, which is I had to use what we called the influence equation to essentially de-escalate what would have been a racially charged altercation at a public volleyball court.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So our volleyball league pays to maintain courts at a public park, and we reserve them every Monday night during the spring, summer, and fall. We cover the cost of the nets, the sand, the rope lining, and it's not just a park to us, it's a community that we actually care about. And a young mom, probably like no older than 27, was at the court with her 5 kids, and they were all hers. So like this woman is not in a good spot, right? But one of her kids was climbing and hanging on the net, so the net over time has begun to really sag, and usually we have to replace the net once a year, and we still have like 8 more weeks to go in this season, and we would have had to raise money from everybody there in order to get the new net, right? So one of our league members from a few courts over yelled at the kids to get off the net and stop hanging on them. Well, the mom immediately lashed back with verbal abuse and profanity, really low level energy, right? He was also not in a really good spot energetically either. So she was on her phone, the kids were being rowdy, and what does this woman feel now? Now she feels attacked and she wants violence. So the situation simmered for a little bit, and while she was kind of on her phone, we realized that she was on the phone with her mom and her boyfriend, and the boyfriend and the mom had come over to essentially whoop ass. And we walked over and I said to the kids, I said, "Hey guys, we have the courts rented and our games are about to start." Very much said it just like that, right? You know me, I'm not one to
Yeah.
raise voice or get anything really crazy. But the mom exploded on me again. And this time it was because I spoke to the kids and not directly to her. But I wasn't the main problem, but now I was the focal point of her narrative and of her anger. So within minutes, her ex-con boyfriend, and you can tell just by looking at him and what he was putting off, and some other things, is that they kind of swiftly got up, and things were starting to get a little volatile. But the grandmother came over to me and loudly started accusing me and our league of being racially biased, saying that this was a targeted attack against her Black family by a group of white volleyball players. And to her defense, we probably have like 2 people in that league that aren't white. But it's not out of choice. It's just where we live and just pure circumstance, right? And the other 2 that aren't, we have an 17-year-old young Black man who plays with us, who plays for a local high school team. And the other one is probably a mid-20s Asian guy. So it's not like we are super ethnically diverse in this situation, right? But as the situation started to escalate, I kind of thought through, okay, what's the best outcome that we could have here, right? Which would be that the kids stop hanging on the net, the family clears out peacefully, and that there's no violence or escalation.
Yeah.
But we can take what we call the behavioral influence equation and apply it across any area that we want to have influence over. And what you have to engineer and kind of think through with this is attention, emotion, and identity resonance. And then think about what all is going to be friction or uncertainty, because those are going to take away from our ability to influence. So attention wise, I placed myself physically between the league member and the family, because you understand that what's in front of us becomes focal and therefore it's casual, right? Like anything that I do is going to be her entire center of focus now if all she can see is me. And they were focusing their anger on another league member. So we removed him from the area where he could be seen, but I made myself the new anchor in that situation. Emotionally, I shook each of their hands. I introduced myself. I said I was one of the 3 people who runs the league, and that did a few things, right? We signaled respect, we built relevance, and I grounded my identity as somebody with authority, but not aggression.
Yeah.
Because they weren't just dealing with some other white guy, they were dealing with someone who wanted a resolution, not necessarily to get more power, which is really big when we look at ethnical diversity and how that starts to play in with other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I couldn't argue that perception of way of like, oh, you're kicking us off because you're Black. And nor is that the right angle to approach something around racism or anything that's necessarily like a heavy cognitive load.
Yeah.
But the main goal is that we had to lower the cognitive load in this situation. So all I did is I clarified my intentions with short, clear, calming sentences. There was no big explanation, no counter accusations. Just, hey, we rented this space and we take care of it. We just want to make sure that the nets don't break. We're happy to share this with you guys at any time, but we just need the kids to be safe and not on the equipment. And we actually really appreciate you guys bringing the kids here, and any other time on Mondays or throughout the rest of the week. Your family is always more than welcome here. It's a public park. And on top of that, we were like, hey, if the kids want to learn to play volleyball, there's a group of us that get here about a half hour early during our time, and we're happy to help introduce them to the sport. So what does that do, right? I changed the frame of mind about influence in this situation wasn't about winning. The goal wasn't to be right. The goal was peace, de-escalation, and behavior change. And it worked, right? And this is what we get into with like, oh, like we need to find a new boyfriend, or I need to find myself more appealing, right? Ultimately, what we need to focus on is how are we pulling the attention in the right areas? What's our emotional state when we're doing this? And does this ultimately identify with who I am as a person and resonate deeply?
Right.
And then what am I doing to reduce friction or uncertainty during that time? Because there was a lot of instances where the friction could have been a lot higher. Uncertainty could have gone through the roof, right? We could have gone after the identity, which would have been a bad mistake. We could have gone after the emotional side, which would have been a bad mistake. But influence isn't just about getting people to buy something or buy into you or buy into the idea of a relationship. It's about clarity, safety, and trust in moments when chaos wants to take over. And then when we do that, it just becomes practice over time, right? We don't want to start in those high stress situations that can escalate into something that we definitely don't want it to escalate into.
No.
But we want to, like, there's areas in our life where we can start to practice these things and the risk is really low. So why not practice them?
Oh, I love it. I love practicing. You know, what we practice, we get good at, right?
That's right.
It's
As
so
long as we're
good.
practicing the right things.
Oh, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. What if you practice the wrong thing, you get good at that too,
Yeah.
right? So
If you
it's like,
practice shame, you're just going to get really good at doing the state of shame.
exactly.
I think Ed said it best, Ed My Life, for those that don't know my reference there. He says that we do depression, and I think that's 100% accurate. And I think we also do any other frequency that we set our mind to. It doesn't mean we're going to get there immediately, but like if you live as if you are joyful,
Yes.
the odds of you seeking things out that confirm your belief, because we hate contradicting ourselves and what we believe to be true about our identity, it's why it's called identity bias, is that you'll start to actually conform to what you want that to be.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to the show. I just want to say to you that we are all together a part of the Mission Awake, a mission that's going to stop the mediocrity that's plaguing all of us. So if you got something here today, I ask that you would be a part of this mission and you'd share it with whoever you can. Take a screenshot of the show and share it on your Instagram. If you are looking for me, you can find me on social media platform Instagram, Alison Answers, or Lager Counseling Services. And give us a review and subscribe, if you could, to YouTube, Alison Answers. That's where you're going to get a lot of content. I drop stuff every day, goofy stuff, all different kinds of stuff. 5-minute videos that just get you moving in your day. Have a great week. See you next time.